Kumlen Black Gemara, and now is Daf Yutes Amar Allah. This is Friday's Gemara. We'll start from Yuches on the very bottom of the page. It says the Gemara, but Sam, it was written with different kinds of ink. Sam is summer, it's like a blue ink, it's no good. But all these inks can be erased easily. Sakura, Sakrata, which is a red ink, it's also no good. Kumum is the sap of a tree. Also, that ink is not a good one. Kankantum, what is that? Charta de ushmchi, when you test them on the top of the page. Kankantum is charta de ushmchi, that is like black shoe polish. And diftra, what's diftra? The meliach ukmiach. That this is parchment that was salted, and they used flour and water to knead it. They didn't use afotzim, which is those walnuts, to finish the job. Taisa said that today we don't need it, but our process today is good enough. And the yar is machaka, which is basically paper. That cannot be kosher for a Megillah. It has to be written. It has to be written in Ashuris, because it says Kiksavam Kizmanam. If you're writing it in Hebrew, if you're reading Hebrew, I'll say it. But how do you know that it has to be on parchment and that kind of ink? We learn that Asya Ksiva Ksiva. We learn that Ksiva 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 Ksiva. Hacher Sabatita Zamalko Ksiva Hasazet says there. Vayamlan Baruch the Piv Yikra Ela is called the word of Ela, and he calls it Sefer B'Yoy. Baruch took from Yirmiyahu, he wrote it down, and he said, I will write it down on a Sefer B'Yoy with ink. Mishnah, a ben, let's say in Shalayim, and let's say in Tel Aviv, a ben is shahalach lekrach, if somebody from Tel Aviv decided to go visit Shalayim. Or a ben krach shalayir, if somebody Shalayim went to visit Purim time to Tel Aviv. Im osid lachzel mekaymai. There are like 4 different ways learning Shadeh, and it's very complicated. We'll just do the way Rashi learns. Im osid lachzel mekaymai, if he intends to, let's say he's from let's say from Tel Aviv, he intends to come back to Tel Aviv. He's the night of the 14th. He's in Yerushalayim, but he tends to come back before daybreak. So in other words, the day mitzvah, he will be in Tel Aviv. Then that night he should read the Megillah as if he was in Tel Aviv, not in Yerushalayim. Even though he's in Yerushalayim, he reads it as if it's in his own place. But if he tends to come back during the day, let's say the 14th of the day, so the night of the 14th, he's in Yerushalayim, and the morning of the 14th Yerushalayim, then Koide Imahen, then he reads like the people in Yerushalayim. Where do you have to, the Mishnah has an interesting argument, where do you have to read the Megillah? What part of the Megillah do you have to read? All of it? Part of it? The Meir says, cool, you have to read the entire Megillah. We'll see the Gemara later why. From the word, from the Ish Yehudi, Hayim Shushan Abira. Rabbi Yosef says, from the story of Haman. Amar Rava says, Rava Loishanu, and now Rava says what I just told before. When do we say that you take on that you still maintain your original minhag of your city where you came from? That before daybreak you plan to leave the Yerushalayim and go back to your old city. If you intend to remain there in the morning, then you have to read like the city you're in right now, Yerushalayim. How do I know that? See if it says Alkena Yehudim Hafrazim Hayoshven Baraprazim. Those people live in open cities, and then it repeats again. They're dwelling in open cities. Mechti. See if it says Hayehudim Hafrazim. Why you have to mention that he's sitting in other prazes? Al Kamas wants to teach you the praise, but praise. That praise one day is even the just for the night of the morning, you're already considered a denizen of a praise. Ask an open city. So we're talking about a guy from Yerushalayim who goes to Tel Aviv. How do you know the other way around? How do you know the other way around? Tel Aviv goes to Yerushalayim. Svaru makes sense. But the praise ben yomer kara praise. Somebody's in an open city just for a day is already considered a member of that city. So Mukib ben yomer kara mukib is considered a member of that city. Yerushalayim. Omar said of another thing. Ben Kfar. What about those people who are allowed those people are allowed to put him earlier because they're people of the village, and we learned before the conclusion was because we're rewarding them for what they make life so much easier for the people in the city. Therefore, we're rewarding them. They're coming on Monday and Thursday. They don't have to come in on Tuesday, Wednesday, and schlep and all that. So Ben Kfach, if he happened to be in the city on the day of Purim, then Ben Kach Koide Iman. Then either way, he has to read with them. And the way Rashi and Taisus learn that even though he read it on Monday, if the Tuesday or Wednesday they're in the city, which happens to be Purim, he has to read it again. My timer, hi kibnei ir by the mikveh. The truth is, only 2 days you read the Megillah, either like Bnei Year the 14th or like Bnei or Mukav Chaim the 15th. No, boss, Rabbanon the Kil al Kfarim. Rabbanon made it easy on the Kfarim, and the correct answer should be the Pnei Shemaspikin Mayim Mazlachin. We reward them because of what they do for their brethren in the cities. So therefore, we're trying to make life easier. They weren't in the city on the actual day. If they taka happen to be also on the 14th day in the city, they have to read the right day as well, even though they read it earlier. Abai asked a question to Rav. That's a question. It says Ben Krach. It says in the following thing in the Braisa, which is very cryptic, and we're going to have to make some amendments to this Braisa. That's what Abai is going to lead to his question. Ben Krach, a city, let's say a member of Yerushalayim, Shaholach went to Tel Aviv. Ben Kach or Ben Kach, Koide Kimekoim. Either way, he reads it like where he comes from. The question is why. Ben Krach Sakadata, we said before, it depends when he plans to return. The Masi allows the time is also do with depends when he plans to return. Elalav Ben Kfar. Obviously, we're talking about even though it said the word Ben Krach, it means a Ben Kfar. So we see clearly from here that a Ben Kfar reads it the way where he came from. He doesn't repeat it again if he's in the city. So Moraz says back to him, that's your question. The lav tirutzim terasa, you changed a couple of words around the Braisa, and now you have a strong question on Rava. Tani koidemon. Let's change a few more words. Instead of saying he reads it like the city he came from, say he reads it like the city where he happens to be in right now. Megillah. For when you read the Megillah, Tanya, we learn the fourth opinion actually. That's where you begin from. All four opinions are based on the following pasuk. Tichter says a pasuk. Tichter as they rode the entire strength and the storm of the story of Achshverosh. What's exactly the main part of the highlight of the story? The one who said that Meir said you have to read the entire Megillah. The main part is the main character here is Achashverosh, and he starts from right in the beginning of the Megillah, from the very first pasuk. The highlight is the story of Mordechai that only starts later on. So therefore, we start with Mordechai later on. The one who said that you start from the third page, that's Shalom, and he holds that the highlight is Haman, and therefore that's where you should begin from. And the one who said the sixth page, he gets that's the miracle. When did the whole tide change? When Achashverosh couldn't sleep. That's Peirik Vav. That's one interpretation. Ravuna is similar, but he reads a different pasuk. Ravuna Mahacha, they're all predicated on the following pasuk. Ma roa kocha mo igi aleim. It says, why did why did it happen this way, and what happened as a result? Ma dama kula says, Ma roa Achashverosh. This is the question. Ma roa Achashverosh. What did Achashverosh see? Shenishtamid bekelim shabeis hamikdash, that he had the guts, the courage to use the kelim of the Beis Hamikdash. Al Koch on this, as we learned for the Gemara, the Chashiv Shivrishnim, he calculated 70 years, miscalculated. Didn't leave. And so what actually happened as a result? The Kotel Vashti, his actions killed his own wife. He teaches as follows. Mara Mordechai, what did Mordechai see? What did Mordechai see? The kind of Haman that he sort of antagonized Haman so much. Al Kocha on this, the Shavi Nafsha Vedazora, because Haman treated himself like he was some kind of idol. He wanted everybody to worship him. And what was the result of that? It caused the whole miracle to take place. What question is, what caused Haman to be so infuriated with all the Eden? Al Kocha on this, which the Mordechai refused to bow down. The result was he and his children were hanged on the tree. The question is as follows: what caused Achashverosh to bring that book, the memories of the past? On this, that Haman is invited to Esther. Achashverosh started thinking. We had the whole conversation Achashverosh had with himself. Am I being threatened? How can nobody help me? Maybe somebody helped me in the past and I didn't reward him properly, and therefore that caused him to bring out a Sefer Zechronis. What was the result? This miracle. You have to read the whole thing. And furthermore, Even those that say they can read us, but the Evid, you read a smaller part, is all right, but you need an entire Megillah to read from. Megillah Nikra Sefer. Megillah is called a Sefer, as it says in the Megillah, and also in Nikra Sigeres. It's called the Geres. Shainis Nikra Sefer. It has features of both. In what way? In what respect is it like a sefer? In tafra bechute pishtum psula. Just like a sefer, according to one opinion, they use flax. What do you call it? Thread of flax is no good. Same thing here also by a Megillah. When he krasi get us a letter, the minimum is to have 3 stitches of gidin as kosher per each piece, each section. It should be equally distant from each other, but you don't start at the very top of the page. We break the page up into, let's say, like 5 parts, and then you have equal parts. And then you have the first part there, and then the second I've got 3, and then the the first, second, and third should be equidistant from each other. So you have actually 4 parts. You have the top of the page to the first stitch to the second stitch to the third stitch, and then the third stitch to the bottom of the page. So you have 4 sections there, and there should be equal sections. If you take a Megillah and it's written as part of a scroll, and you have other Megillahs there, Rus and Shirashim, whatever it is as well, you're not Yates, it should be standalone. It's in the Geddes, a standalone. It's only talking about what if the Megillah section is no longer or shorter than the rest. But if it stands out from the rest, you can see that this is a separate scroll because it's taller than the rest or shorter, then it's all right. Levi Bashmul have a kokari kamed Rav Yehuda and Megillah. Levi Bashmul was reading for Rav Yehuda and Megillah. Haksuvim and Haksuvim, such a Megillah. On Malay, he said to him, Adi Amru, didn't it say Hakoidim and Megillah, Haksuvim and Haksuvim Layotza? And this Megillah was exactly, you couldn't even tell which section was the Megillah because the Rus was there and other things were there and they were all the same. How can you read that? Hakoidim and Megillah, sorry. Amalu Hari Amru, Hakoidim and Megillah, Layotza, you're not Yaitz. How can you read from that? So the Gemara continues. In other words, so Levi Shmuel shouldn't have read from that sefer. He did the wrong thing. Comes on further, says Amar B'chi Bar Abba B'Yechon Hakoyde B'Megillah Ksuvin Ksuvin. So he's a Megillah that's equal to other Ksuvin that are all bound together. Lo Yatzi, not Yaitz. And then Umachola Mechik. Sort of, it literally means he hit himself on his head, like he decided to change his mind. B'tzibur Shani. The only time is if you're reading it communally for other people, then it has to be like Pesum Nisa. And part of it is they should see that you're reading a separate scroll, and if it's part of the rest, it doesn't appear so. But if you're reading it for yourself, and you know exactly what it is, therefore it's not a problem. You're allowed to. The fact is you shouldn't stitch it all the way to the top, you should leave a bit of space. That's halacha Moshe Sinai. Then he smacked himself. He said, no, it's only the Rabbanon. And the logic is very simple. If you have the stitch all the way to the very top of the cloth, if you give a yank, it will rip open. But if you give it a little bit of leverage, if you give it a little leeway, and you make the stitch not the very top, a little bit lower, then it is all right. So it doesn't tear. So it's only the Rabbanon and being very practical. And talking about things that he said, so we're digressing a bit. Moshe want to see the Eibishter, and the Eibishter don't go in the cleft of the mountain, and then they completely covered it up. If there would have been even a tiny little hole, even the tiniest needle, the tiniest little hole, they couldn't withstand the kedusha that emanated and was radiated. Now it says, nobody can see me and exist. It says regarding Moshe Rabbeinu and all the writing over there that Hashem spoke to him in the mountain, I mean, all the writing, it comes to teacher that what was Moshe Rabbeinu? What did he learn in Har Sinai? What did Hashem show Moshe? Dikduke Torah, all the dikdukim of the Torah, the Ribui and the Miyutim, and so on and so forth. The Dikduke Seifri, and all the things that Chachamim, the Chazal, learned out from the words of the Torah, or from earlier authorities. Umasha Seif Masid Chadish, what the Seifrim will add later on to the Chavdal Chumash, Ma'niyah Mikra Megillah. He saw all that, and this is similar to what the Yerushalmi says that Kol Masha Talmud Vosik Osel Chadish Kanil Moshe Sinai. Whatever a Talmud in the future will come up with, already Moshe Rabbeinu heard that in Sinai. So it's all included in the Torah. Next Mishnah. We had the Gemara on this Mishnah already, Gemara Brachas, and a similar Gemara here. Hakok Shadin Likras in Megillah. Everybody can read the Megillah. Chutz Mechedesh, somebody who is, we're talking about somebody who's not deaf and dumb, because then he's part of mitzvah. We're talking about in this case here, as we'll see, somebody is deaf, but he can speak, and therefore he's chayiv in mitzvahs, but the problem is he can't hear, or a shait or a cotton. And it sounds like from here that if somebody cannot hear, it's just like a shait and a cotton, there's no mitzvah at all. Because this follows Rabbi Yossi, who says that, like Krishma, you have to hear what you're saying, and if you cannot hear, you're not yotze. Same thing over here, if you cannot hear Megillah, you're not yotze at all. Now, a cotton is not yotze either. Rabbi Yehuda is machshir a cotton. He said a cotton is all right. And all the Rishonim want to know what's going on here. How can Rabbi Yehuda say a cotton is all right? And then the question actually is all the way around. Since the whole mitzvah Megillah is Rabbanon, and a cotton, we'll see in the Gemara, talking about a cotton who's old enough, who's chayiv and chinuch, who's a Rabbanon. So why can't a cotton be reading Megillah for somebody else? So Taisus makes a big chiddush. There's a difference between a two Rabbanons and a one Rabbanon. An adult generally is chayiv all mitzvah the Torah, but it happens to be this one is midrabbanon. So there's only one Rabbanon there. A child has two Rabbanons. The mitzvah Megillah is Rabbanon, and the fact that he's chayiv in any mitzvah is only Rabbanon. And two Rabbanon is a step lower than one Rabbanon, and he cannot be mitzi. That's Taisus and all those who follow Taisus. The other shit is like Rashi in Brochas, and the Ramban in the here in Megillah, and other Rishonim, they learn that a child, the mitzvah of chinuch is not on the child, the mitzvah of chinuch is on the parent. How can the mitzvah be in the child? The Torah says I cannot give any mitzvah to a child because they're irresponsible. How can the Rabbanah come along and say give the mitzvah of chinuch? They're irresponsible. The mitzvah is on the parent to make sure that the kid does the right thing. So because the mitzvah is on the parent and the kid has no mitzvah, the kid therefore cannot be mitzi anybody else. But the question then is, so how can Rabbi Yehuda hold that a kid could be mitzi? So there's two ways of learning. One way is Rabbi Yehuda argues on this very point. He holds the mitzvah of chinuch is on the child, and therefore he could be mitzi. Another pshat is the reason why Rabbi Yehuda holds a child who mitzi is interesting. What Taisus and others say is because af hein hoya ba'isa hanes. Haman threatened to kill men, women, and children, and therefore they were included in the nest, and therefore Megillah is an exception. That they maybe even a child has the mitzvah of Megillah, even though the mitzvah of chinuch is only on the parent. But Megillah is different. The mitzvah of Megillah is the only mitzvah that a child actually has directly on himself. Okay, Gemara. Man Tana, the way we read the Mishnah, it sounds like a chedesh is not yotzi b'diavad. Man Tana chedesh diavad amila. Who holds that a chedesh? That somebody's deaf has no mitzvah of Megillah at all, and even b'diavad is not yotzi. Oh, but Master says Rabbi Yossi. This follows Rabbi Yossi. If you can't hear, you're not yotzi. Now we learned hakodesh shma. If you reach ma v'leish me loves, we had this a few days ago. You reach ma and you don't hear what you're saying. Yotzeb. You're yotze. But Rabbi Yossi says lo yotze. You're not yotze. So the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yossi. That's why the chedesh is no good. Says the Gemara. So you're telling me the Pshat in our Mishnah is Rabbi Yossi. And why are you telling me it's Rabbi Yossi? Because you understand that Chedesh, Shait, and Cotton are all the same. That even by the Eved you're not Yossi. But the Eved, how do you know? Maybe the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda, and you thought Rabbi Yehuda holds that lechatchila you don't have to hear what you're saying. No, maybe Rabbi Yehuda agrees with Rabbi Yossi lechatchila you should hear when you say Krishma what you're saying. They're only arguing by the Eved for Yotze, not Yotze. But the Eved. So maybe our Mishnah is the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda, and when it says Chedesh, you're not Yotze, it's only mean lechatchila. But the Eved, a Chedesh can read the Megillah. So what it can't be because we bunch together the aggregated Chedesh or Cotton. When it comes to Sheit v'Cotton, there's no argument that they're not only Yotze, even the Eved that have no mitzvah, they can't be mitzi anybody. So I've Chedesh the Eved Amalek. Clearly, our Mishnah holds that a Chedesh even the Eved not Yotze. It must be it's Rabbi Yossi. It can't be Rabbi Yehuda. Who said the Dilma Hakadisa v'Hakadisa? This is our Gisa. Rashi's Gisa and Gemara is different. Maybe a Chedesh is only lechatchila, not Yotze, and the Sheit v'Cotton even the Eved, and the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. Mediktani Sigmar says no. Mediktani say for Rabbi Yehuda Mashal Cotton. The end of the Mishnah says Rabbi Yehuda holds a cotton as kosher. Mikla obviously the Reish should allow Rabbi Yehuda. The author of the Mishnah can't be Rabbi Yehuda because the end introduces Rabbi Yehuda. So the beginning must be Rabbi Yossi. Says Gemara, how do you know? Maybe in the time Mishnah Rabbi Yehuda says it can't be. Midami Reish L'Psula v'Sefer L'Ksheila. And Rashi actually omits this line here. It's hard to say it's Rabbi Yehuda because the beginning of the Mishnah is trying to tell you what's possible, and then the end of the Mishnah is telling you it's kosher. So it's like two different opinions. Says no. Maybe the time is Rabbi Yehuda, but a couple of words are missing. Before we get to that, but today, Gavne, Cotton Ketani law, the Mishnah is not contradicting itself. In the first part of the Mishnah, when it says that cotton is no good, it's talking about a cotton very young, did not reach the age of chinuch. And Rabbi Yehuda, who says the machshir cotton, about a cotton that's older, but it's the same Rabbi Yehuda. The Chsuri Mechsa, a couple of words are missing. This I should learn. Everyone is called reading Megillah, chutz mechesher cotton. Everyone can read the Megillah except the Cheresh and the cotton. But Medvar, when is all that talking about? The cotton shalai gil chinuch, a cotton who did not reach the age of chinuch. Avo, the cotton she gil chinuch, but a cotton who did reach the age of chinuch. Afilu lechatchila, even lechatchila could reach Rabbi Yehuda machshir the cotton. So maybe the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds like when it comes to a chedesh lechatchila taki, you shouldn't read, but the evidence yaitze. Shoyt of a cotton, even by the evidence not yaitze. That takes care of the first part of the Mishnah. And when it comes to a cotton, there are two kinds of cotton. A very young cotton cannot read at all, and an older cotton can read for some because they're both the Rabbans. Says the Gemara, so you're telling me now, so this whole argument, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yasi, whether you hear Krishna, if you don't hear Krishna Yates or not, is only talking about the Evid. You're telling me this. Everyone agrees that you have to hear, when you say Krishna, you have to hear every word you're saying. But, or Megillah, the same thing. But what happens, he didn't. Rabbi Yasi says you're not Yates, and Rabbi Yehuda says you are Yates. So I have a problem, because we have another din somewhere where it says even you don't have to hear. Who's the author of that? So the Gemara, you're trying to tell me the author about Mishnah Rabbi Yehuda. If it the Eved, and you tell me that it's talking about if it happened, but tell me what Rabbi Yehuda said name Shem Pazi. Chedesh Hamedaber ve'ein shemeya. Chedesh who speaks but does not hear. Toirim lechatchila can give truma even though they cannot hear the bracha and everything else. Chatchila can do it. Mani who holds the chatchila, you don't have to hear. You just told me Rabbi Yehuda the evedin lechatchila. Even Rabbi Yehuda said the chatchila, you have to hear what you're saying. And Rabbi Yossi the even amilai even the evedin not yaitza. Says you can put it back. So what do you want to tell me for argument's sake? You want to say Rabbi Yehuda, the author of this thing here in the name of Shimon Pazi, that Chatchila can give truma, it must be Rabbi Yehuda, that even the Chatchila, you don't have to hear a word you're saying. So Rabbi Yehuda holds the Chatchila, you don't have to hear a word you're saying. Rabbi Yossi says that even by the Eved, if you don't hear what you're saying, you're not Yosef. So I have a problem with that. On third brayse, lo yevarich other bichas hamazon believer. Don't bench with your eyes. The Beidach Yatzah, but the Evid you are Yatzah. Who holds that? Who holds the Chatchila? You have to hear what you're saying, but the Evid you Yatzah. You just told me that Yehuda holds that even the Chatchila you don't have to hear what you're saying. Rabbi Yossi holds that even the Evid you're not Yatzah. So who holds the Chatchila? You don't have to hear what you're saying. You do have to hear what you're saying, but the Evid, if you didn't, you didn't. Who's that? Mani, loy Rabbi Yehuda, loy Rabbi Yossi. Because Rabbi Yehuda, after the Chatchila, Rabbi Yehuda just told me even the Chatchila, you don't have to hear what you're saying. And Rabbi Yossi for the Evid Amli, Rabbi Yossi, the Evid, you're not Yatzah at all. Says the Gemara, no, I'll tell you what. The Elam Rabbi Yehuda, I can argue. Rabbi Yehuda take a hold. I can tell you this. Our Mishnah is Rabbi Yossi. The way we want to say the Chila. Our Mishnah is Rabbi Yossi, and therefore that a chedesh like shayt of a cotton that even by the Evid you're not Yotzer. Rabbi Yehuda personally hold that even the Chatchila you don't have to hear what you're saying. What about this benching? Who's the author of the benching that says the Chatchila you have to hear, but the Evid you don't? The like Kashi. Rabbi Yehuda's personal view is the Chatchila you don't have to hear what you're saying, but his Rebbe's view is Shimon Pazi that the Chatchila you should hear if you did, he didn't. Time you know him, sorry, Rabbi Yehuda's name was Nazaya. The name is Rebbe Lezman Nazaya. Hakodesh Shmat Tzorich. If you reach Shmat Tzorich Sheyashmi Lozne, you should listen to it. The lashon, the expression Tzorich means the Chatchila you should. But the Evid, if he didn't, it's all right. She never said, Shema Yisrael, listen with your ears what you say in your mouth. It's clearly Rabbi Lozman Azai is saying the Chatchila, but the Evid doesn't matter. The Meir says, you don't even have to hear what you're saying. It says, as long as you're thinking about it, it's good enough. Says the Gemara, now that we introduced the Meir, he holds the Chatchila, you don't have to hear what you're saying. We'll go back to our original thing. That maybe the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda holds the Chatchila, you should hear what you're saying, like his Rebbe Lozman Azai, it's only by the Evid. And Chedesh, the Chatchila, you should be Yaitzer. And by and by benching, it's Rabbi Yehuda holds the Chatchila, you should hear what you're saying, but the Evid. Now, what about what do you call it? When you said the name, the Shimon Pazi by Truma, the Chatchila, you can go ahead and give Truma, you don't hear what you're saying. I can tell you that's a man. I feel Tam Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi said, hold like his own Rebbe, you have to hear what you're saying, but if you didn't, it's all right. That opinion of Yehuda, the son of Shimon Pazi, that follows Rab Meir. And therefore, now the Gemara says the author of our Mishnah is actually Rabbi Yehuda, and therefore the Chatchila you have to hear what you're saying, and Chedesh is the Chatchila, not like Shait V'Katan. And this other place we said by Truma, they don't have to Chatchila, go ahead and give Truma, you don't hear what you're saying. That is the opinion of Rab Meir. Okay, this finishes the Gemara, and on Motzei Shabbos we'll do a half an hour after Shabbos, like usual.